All right. Can everybody hear me okay? This is not my usual recording setup. All right, yeah, we'll just give people a little bit of time to get set up and stuff. How's everybody doing today? Hope you're all enjoying the wonder that is HAHCon. I've been having a pretty good time myself. It's a pretty awesome convention. Cool. And if you are a regular viewer, this is maybe a bit of a departure from my usual stuff. Yeah, we're basically going to be doing something a little different today. Cool. Hey, Proto, how's it going? Also, good to see a whole bunch of new faces here. That's awesome. And yeah, I think give people another minute and then we'll get started. Because I know stream asynchrony can be a little bit weird. I also don't know why I'm still wearing these. I don't need to hear myself for this. It's fine. Cool. Can everybody hear me okay? Just want to make sure. Am I a good volume? Could you turn the volume up? Okay, sure. All right, I'll fix that. Okay. Is that better? Can you hear me better? Better or worse? Okay, sure. I'm just gonna go like that. Is that better? Because yeah, I'm trying not to clip my interface over here. Okay, cool. Also, hey, Soul. Nice to see ya. I see some regulars in the chat, so yeah. Anyway, so with that in mind, I think there's enough people here. Looks like everyone's filtered in, so we can probably get this party started. Welcome to Home Vocal Recording on a Budget. I'm Shal, and I've been doing this for a while now. This is the first time I've ever done this panel online, but yeah. So this is basically just going to be sort of an overall crash course on home recording. We're going to talk about equipment. We're going to talk a bit about how to use it, and we're also going to talk a little bit about mixing. So and feel free to ask questions as we're going through this. And don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions. So let's get started. So let's talk a little bit about what I won't be covering today. So for starters, we won't be talking about vocal performance. I'm going to kind of already assume that you have that on lockdown. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to really say about that. I'm going to assume that you know what kind of performance you want to do, that you know how to like voice act or sing or do dramatic readings, and all you really need to do is record it. So just sort of scoping things a little bit. I'm also not going to be talking about live sound. This is recording specifically from the confines of your home studio. As you can see, I'm currently in a bedroom, and I'm assuming that most of you are going to be in a similar situation. So that should make things a little bit easier to work with, so you won't have to handle things like feedback most of the time. Cool. All right, so onward and upward. Let's talk about equipment. So I understand that not everybody wants to spend a ton of money getting into this right off the bat, and you may not necessarily have a ton of money at your disposal, and that's fine. So with that in mind, I actually have 3 levels, sort of 3 budgets that we're going to be working with today. I have the Barebones Recording budget, the general sort of good microphone with assorted free stuff, and then the full home studio. So as we go through this, I'll sort of break down each one at a time. So for starters, the Barebones budget. As you can see, it goes pretty cheap. You can get started for as low as $15. And I do have various props here with me, and I will be showing them to you as we go through this stream. I may even be moving the camera around a little bit because some of my recording equipment is currently being used. So for starters, this Barebones Recording budget. Going to be this is so cheap because I'm assuming you're doing everything on a smartphone. So the thing that you want for basically in order for you to get decent quality sound is this. This is a wired lavalier microphone. I'll bring it a little bit closer so that you can see. So as you can see, it's a little clip-on mic. And it clips right onto your lapel. And as you can see, it also has this little cable that plugs into your headphone jack. Notice the 3 stripes on it. That is very important. If you want a microphone that plugs into a smartphone headphone jack, it needs to have 3 stripes on it. If it only has 2, it won't work. So this particular one is the PowerDeWise lavalier microphone. It comes with this squishy little carrying case with a zipper on it, and it was $22. I've seen lavalier microphones for as cheap as $15, or as much as $75 if you want to get the Rode Smart Lav Plus. You kind of get what you pay for, but generally speaking, like they're not bad quality. And as far as what you're going to be recording, you'll be plugging everything into this, your smartphone. And so you need some sort of a recorder app. So you need some sort of a recorder. You need some sort of a recorder app. So I have a smart recorder. The app is called Smart Recorder, I think, on Android. I think you could probably find a free one for iOS as well. If you're willing to pay a little bit more money, I generally recommend FL Studio Mobile. It's a full-fledged digital audio workstation, so in addition to allowing you to record yourself, you can also mix things. You can make a full song if you really wanted to. It's pretty cool, and that goes for $20. But yeah, you can get your start for just as low as $15, assuming you already have a smartphone, which I'm assuming most people do. You don't even need to have a fancy one. Like this is a Google Pixel. You don't need to have something that's this big. You could probably do this with like a basic, like an old school iPhone would probably work fine. And then you probably need some sort of headphones to listen back on, and obviously you need a smartphone. Now, I will say this particular setup's a little tricky because as you're plugging things into the headphone jack, you can't hear yourself through the headphones while you're recording. Now, I've not really tested it out with a Bluetooth speaker, but or Bluetooth headphones. But generally speaking, your best bet is this setup will work best if you record yourself and then mess around with it later. But that's kind of the trade-off that you have for something that's this simple. Okay. In YouTube, you are super tiny down in the corner. Any chance you could replace the size when you show stuff on camera? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I'm going to do that right now. Just I actually have that set up. So, Smart Lav. Hello there. Hello there. Lav mic. It has this little pluggy dealy here. Please focus. As you can see, 3 stripes. Plug just clips on to like this, like here. And then you have a thingy. Ta-da! And it has a big cable on it. Cool. All right. So there's that. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of people here. This is probably one of my biggest streams yet. I appreciate your attendance. Okay, so that's budget 1. As you can see, it starts very simple, and then we kind of scale up from there. Next, the good mic budget with free stuff. So the main thing that you're going to be spending your money on is a microphone. This setup assumes that you're going to be using a desktop or a laptop computer. And so the microphone that you're going to want is some sort of a USB mic. The one that I generally recommend is this guy here. This is a Samson C01U. I don't know if they sell this specific anymore. You could also get its bigger cousin, the Samson C01U Pro, which goes for $85. If you're looking to go as low as possible, there's the Samson Meteor, which is $50, and then there's also the Blue Snowball, which is $65. If you happen to have like a particularly complex recording situation and you need to record a lot of different stuff, you could purchase a Blue Yeti. But I generally don't recommend that because they're kind of overkill for most people's needs. So yes, this is a good mic, and it comes with its own little stand and its own little tripod so that it can sit on your desk. So that's fairly easy. But yeah, you can get USB mics. I generally recommend spending no more than $100 on them, but no less than $50, because they also have those ones that are like a $25 condenser microphone. You sound very potato if you use one of those. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so you obviously need a pair of headphones, just anything that you can get your hands on. Any old computer, just use the one that you have. And that, I think, is the main recommendation, is that you don't have to go and buy a ton of new stuff in order to get started. It's fine. And then the other thing is, some sort of recording software. The main ones I recommend are, if you're on a Mac, GarageBand, because GarageBand's it's really good quality. It's basically Logic Pro Lite, so it's pretty nice. And then there's Pro Tools First if you're on a Windows machine. And that's because Pro Tools is an industry-leading audio program, and Pro Tools First is sort of the freeware version of that. So it's good quality. It's a little bit more limited, but for most people's needs, it's actually pretty robust. So good choice there. And now, as for Audacity, I know a lot of people are a big fan of using Audacity. I don't like it as much because it's an audio editor. It's not a digital audio workstation. It basically applies the audio filters and stuff destructively and actually changes the audio files as opposed to applying them non-destructively where you can change them and mix them around. If you're familiar with Photoshop, it's the difference between applying your filters directly to a layer and using smart filters. That's the difference between Audacity and a digital audio workstation. So just something to keep in mind. What do you like for headphones? That's a good question. At this budget, anything goes. Anything is fine. Just use whatever you can get your hands on, because the goal right now at these budget levels is just to start. It's just to have something to record with. But if you actually want to spend a little bit more money on something a bit nicer, there's the full home studio option, which is the one that I use, because I make music on a regular basis, YouTube videos on a regular basis. So this is enough equipment to meet my needs. So let's talk about that gear a little bit. Now for showing off some stuff. Okay, so first things first, microphones. Switching back over to the me cam. How you doing, everybody? So XLR microphones. These are microphones that have these sort of, I can show a cable here. An XLR microphone is one that has a cable that looks like that, or like this. Goes like that. Just throw that down there. An XLR microphone is recommended for the full home setup because it works with a lot more stuff than 1/4-inch inputs or like USB inputs. The idea is that so XLR microphones work for most things, like an audio interface, which I'll get to in a bit. There are a couple different types of XLR microphones, and there's a couple that I'll be showing you here. The first one is this guy. This is I'll bring it a little closer. Whee! Going for a trip. Oh my god, I'm knocking my ponies over. I have pony figurines on my desk. Anyway, so this is a Behringer B1 XLR condenser microphone. And that is currently what I'm speaking into. It is $100. It comes with this fancy shock mount on it, as well as this heavy-duty carrying case, which has a windscreen in it as well. So that's all fun. What else? And then you also putting camera back. Oh god, we're flying around in space. Okay, and we're back. I'm a little off center, but it's okay. So then there's the other one that is. So the other microphone that I brought with me is my Shure SM57. This one is a XLR dynamic microphone. It didn't come with the windscreen. I bought that separate. This microphone also goes for $100. The main difference between the two is that they sound slightly different, and they behave slightly differently at louder volumes. This one needs an external power source, so if you have something that delivers phantom power or 48 volts, that's what this needs. A dynamic microphone like the SM57 can be used with anything. As far as which one to get, it all comes down to kind of personal preference. They're both really good, and you can get good results with both of them. And they both sound good for vocals. This is kind of like a general, this sounds good on everything kind of microphone. And the SM57 is like, it's a rugged mic. You can like drop it, you can kick it around, and it won't break. What else? So that's microphones. Double checking things. Okay, next thing, XLR cables. I wanted to bring that one specifically because most microphones don't come with cables, so you kind of have to buy them yourself. And they're not expensive. This was, I think it was like 10 or 15 bucks. And they come in a variety of lengths. I have one that's 10 feet, one that's 25 feet. You could get them as long as 100 feet if you really care. Not a big deal. Oh, and by the way, this stream will be recorded. And so you will be able to see the recording after we're done here. I'm just trying to keep an eye on our time. Cool, so far so good. Logitech G430. I'm not familiar with that one. Let's see. Okay, pop filters. As in our magical expedition, I also briefly showed you this thing. This is a pop filter. You may have seen like some of the microphones, like this one has a windscreen on it. I generally prefer pop filters over windscreens for one primary reason. You can move these. You can put them anywhere you want, which makes it much easier for you to get a good mic position than the windscreen, which is just stuck on top of the microphone. Now, why do you need a pop filter? The main reason you need it is so that you can deal with the plosives, the blasts of air that come out of your mouth when you make B and P sounds. That's very useful to have some way to disperse that, because otherwise if it goes in the microphone, it sounds like this. It's not good for the mic and sounds bad. So, much less of a problem. So, yeah, so that's good. So that's pop filters. This one was, I think, $15 or $10 or $15. If you're feeling particularly DIY, you can actually make your own out of like an embroidery hoop and a piece of pantyhose. I actually used one of those for years, but then I realized this is easier to work with, so I bit the bullet and bought one of my own. All right, let's see what's next. Oh, sorry for hurting your ears with the plosives. Sorry about that. And then, oh, I skipped one. Mic stands. So this, oh, that's guitar. So this thing here is a Samson, I think, MK10 microphone boom stand. The idea with that is that it allows you to basically put your microphone anywhere you want. Like, because most USB mics, you just put them on your desk and you can't do anything with it. Like you're stuck. I'm on my desk now, can't move it around. But with this, you can put it anywhere. You can put it way up high and record the ceiling, or you could put it way down low and record a kick drum. It's very, very nice. So yes, mic stands. This one was like not super expensive. Let's see. A pair of, next thing is headphones. If you're going to be taking things a little bit more seriously, I'll talk a bit more about headphone specifics. You specifically want headphones that are ear covering and closed back, because they have open back ones which sound really nice, like stereo wise it could be good for mixing, but closed back ones are good for recording because they don't emit any sound, and because you don't want any extra sound getting into the microphone. It just sounds really stupid. The ones that I generally recommend are these. These are, I'll just show that a little closer here. These are Sony MDR 7506 studio monitor headphones. They're $80. They sound really good. More specifically, they sound really flat. They're very, very accurate listening. And they are, like I said, they're $80. They're fairly rugged, and you can use them for basically anything. If you ever see like people like film crews that are filming on like a movie set or something, most of them are wearing these because they're cheap and they're rugged and they sound great. Yeah, so there's that. What else? A computer. Any old computer, just preferably one with a bunch of USB ports, decent RAM, and a decent processor. Otherwise, everything's going to be laggy and stuff. Next thing. What's it? A digital audio workstation. I spoke about this already a little bit, but if you're going to be taking music or recording a little bit more seriously, I generally recommend paying for a paying for a digital audio workstation. There are tons of them out there. There are dozens of really, really good ones. You can go as cheap as $60 for Reaper, for the non-commercial license of Reaper. Really, really good program, solid, awesome software. Or you could pay as much as $600 for Pro Tools. And that's also really, really good, very popular in the professional studios, and you could go anywhere in between. I personally use FL Studio. I have the FL Studio Signature Bundle, which costs about $300. If you get the Producer Edition, it's $200. And it's pretty much all digital audio workstations are good. You're mainly looking at differences in workflow, differences in stock plugins. Just don't be afraid to explore and try them out, because they all have trial versions, and figure out which one makes the most sense for what you want to do. So there's that. Okay, so before I move on, I see there's a couple questions in here. Hey, Corpulent, good to see ya. It's been a while since we talked. How easy are they to clean? I'm assuming you're referring to the headphones. They're fine to clean. They're not a huge deal. Like, I don't wear them to the point that they get dirty. You can probably just use like a basic cloth or something to wipe them off. Not a huge deal. What else? Audio interface. That's what's next. This is the beating heart of any home studio. This is an audio interface. It is the thing that as you can see, talking, wow, wow, wow. And then, so basically this is the thing that you plug your microphone or microphones into. As you can see, it connects you can plug in 2 of them, and then it goes out to my headphones or to my studio monitors, which I'll get to in a second. This is a Focusrite Scarlett 2i4. I think it was $180. The main benefit of having this as opposed to plugging it directly into your computer is that this allows you to record and listen back to various types of audio at the same time with basically 0 latency. The sound cards in your computer are nowhere near as powerful as this thing. And you can potentially get ones that have like as many as like 18 inputs. So if it's like, I want to record a drum kit, you can totally do that. So yeah, this thing is pretty solid, and you can crank it up using these guys. It currently, the little red light there, that says 48 volts, which is what's needed for this microphone to run. And it has an independent speaker volume and headphone volume. Audio interfaces run the gamut in terms of price from as cheap as they run the gamut from as cheap as $100 to as much as like several thousand, depending on how many inputs or how fancy you want it to get. So that's all good. Let's see, just going. So that's good. And now the last 2 things are optional but recommended. Okay, it's just double checking things. Oh yes, Twilight stickers included, just because everything's better with Purple Smart. Had that same audio interface, but you stopped using it because the audio was never loud enough. Using with an M's boost the output. So they have an input gain. I generally don't recommend cranking that too high. Your best bet is to, in your recording software, to record it and then turn it up afterwards. I'll talk more about that in a bit, but that's generally what I recommend. So, and then this mic is a Behringer B1. Okay, so the 2 things that are optional that I generally recommend are acoustic treatment and studio monitors. Acoustic treatment are those like sort of foam pads that you see put up all on the wall that you see, like if you ever watched Markiplier, like he has acoustic treatment all over the walls. Most people don't need to go that much. If you just want it for the purposes of making mixing easier so that you can hear your audio more accurately, you just need to put it in a few strategic locations. And then in the corners, and that will take care of your business. And if you want like sort of a more quiet, dead, isolated sound for voice acting, you could just make a very basic vocal booth. Like you could get a box and put acoustic treatment on the inside there. That's very easy. And so the other thing are studio monitors. We're flying around again. Woo! So this is a studio monitor. And this is another studio monitor. These are ponies. This studio monitor is a PreSonus Eris E5 studio monitor. The main benefit of studio monitors over other types of speakers is that they are designed to not artificially flatter the sound. They're designed to be as flat and accurate as possible with the audio, so that you don't have to, so that you're able to make appropriate mixing decisions with what you hear. This is less important for things like voice acting, but for music, they make a humongous difference. I'm bumping my mic. I apologize. Those monitors together were $300. You can spend as much as like thousands of dollars on a pair of like Genelec monitors. Yes, I have a Sprout. That's just kind of how I roll. Anyway, so that's equipment. Before I move on to the next part, any other questions that people have? Oh, I see a couple on there already. Do you ever get static shocks while wearing your headset? No. That's not good if you feel a static up there while you're wearing a headset. That could be a bad thing. How to upgrade voice box? You get good? I don't know. Okay. All right, cool. So let's move on to the next bit. Let's talk about actually using this stuff. Oh, do you use virtual instruments? Yes, I do. I make heavy use of synthesizers in my music. I have a couple. There's a couple good stock instruments in FL Studio. I recently purchased a virtual bass guitar and a virtual drum kit because I like making metal, but I'm not so skilled to be able to play bass and drums. So yeah, virtual instruments are fun, and they run the gamut in terms of pricing. They can be as cheap as $5 or even free to as much as $1,400 for the full library of East-West Quantum Leap. Finding free affordable stuff. Maybe afterward. Anyway, I'm kind of... we'll talk more about that kind of stuff afterward if people have more questions. I'm not in a huge rush. Anyway, let's talk about getting the most out of your equipment, which is to say how to use it. So the first rule of home recording is to start with a good room. Just pick the best room that you can in terms of acoustic quality. And so, like, a good rule of thumb is, like, go into the room and clap your hands. If it sounds super echoey, it's probably not great. Like this room, probably not great. I do what I can to make it a little better, but yeah, if you have a choice in the room, choose the best one. Bigger rooms generally sound pretty good. The higher ceilings are generally pretty good. Use a closet filled with clothes. Good call, Corpulent. I'll come back to that. And so you want to generally make sure that the noise in the room is fairly low. Like, I've closed a lot of the doors. I've turned off a lot of the fans so they don't hear in the background all the time. What else? And there are some things that you can do to improve the quality of the acoustics in your room. Carpet, good thing. Curtains definitely help. Having a bed there or a sofa. You could potentially put blankets on the walls. Or you could do what Corpulent suggested and record in a linen closet. I kid you not, that is a fantastic place to record because all those bed sheets and blankets and towels are really good for muffling the sound of the room. And then what else? You can make a DIY vocal booth by taking a chair, flipping it over, draping a big puffy coat over top, and putting your microphone inside. Works like a charm. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that you could do to clean up the acoustics of your room so that it doesn't sound quite so noisy. What else? Okay, so as far as mic placement goes, this one's going to require some visuals. So we'll make the switch. Okay, so as far as a lav mic goes, the main rule of thumb is just distance is as close as you can to your head, to your mouth. This is probably fine. You don't want it to be so close that you're leaning into it whenever you bend over, but you don't want it so far away that it can't hear you, because the range on this thing is actually very limited. Now, as far as mic placement for these guys, there's a little bit more to think about. You generally want to be in the center of the room as far as you can from any walls or windows, especially windows. You don't want to you want to keep your microphone away from anything that's like super reverberant like that. What else? let's see. You want to stand, generally speaking, in front of the microphone. And then you want it to be, okay, the next part is like this. So you want your microphone to be about the same height as your vocalist, or in your case, you, at about eye height. And then what you do is you then point the microphone down towards your mouth. So that way, the microphone still gets the sound, still gets the sound from your voice without getting the air from your mouth, because the air from your face holes goes out and down. Whereas if the microphone is above, it'll be like, I still hear the sound, but the will go out of the way. So the other part is use a pop filter. Let's see what else. As far as how far the pop filter should be, I usually use my fist. So I go fist on mic grill. I am sorry, this is super loud. So fist on mic grill, and then rest the pop filter against the other side of your fist. And that should be a good approximate distance. And then as far as how far you want to be from the mic, there's some variability in there. You could be super close if you want to go like all like ASMR and just, this is how you get a very close, intimate vocal sound. Or you could be all the way out here and be super loud and like get all that sound from the room. Trade-offs. It's all about how far you generally, what kind of sound you're going for. And then there's also something called, I'm going to double check to see if there's anything else. There's also something called the proximity effect, where it's like you get super close to the mic. I apologize. You might want to back off your headphones a little bit. In a world where people are using vocal mics correctly. That was super bassy, wasn't it? That's called the proximity effect. That happens with microphones like this or microphones like this, where they pick up sound really well from the front, but basically nothing from the back. They're called cardioid microphones. And they all have this effect where the closer you get to the microphone, the bassier it becomes. So if you want to have that Don LaFontaine kind of thing going on, you could totally just eat the microphone and it'll sound super bassy. But if you don't want that, you want to be a bit farther away. General rule of thumb for like good general purpose distance from microphone, 8 to 12 inches, give or take. The way I determine that, 8 inches, 12 inches. General rule of thumb, that's how you stay rough ballpark of good balance of room sound, good noise. Because if that's the thing, if you're too close, you get a lot of spit noises and breathing, and you have to be a lot quieter. So, trade-offs. Yeah. Let's see what else. So that's the basics of mic placement. Just general things to keep in mind. Let's see, what else? What's next on the list? And yeah, the main thing I just recommend is just taking like 15 minutes or so to go through and review your mic placement and play around with things. You could even rotate your microphone off axis if you want to get a different sound. Totally up to you. That's the idea. It's like there's a lot of experimentation that you could do here. There's no hard and fast rules as long as you're not breaking your equipment. Okay, so next things on the list. Okay, general other recording tips. Make sure you can hear yourself. Because if you can't hear yourself talk, obviously you're not going to give a good performance. This is less of an issue when it comes to, like, I'm just recording myself for voice acting. You could just make sure you can hear yourself. If you're doing podcasting, make sure you can hear everybody fairly well. Music is where it's particularly important because you need to be able to hear yourself, the background music, and any sort of click tracks or guide tracks that you're using. And they all need to be audible, and they all need to be at a comfortable volume level. Loud enough that you can hear it clearly, but not so loud that it's uncomfortable. Because any sort of variation outside of that comfort zone will make it harder for you to give a good performance because you'll be distracted. So take that. It's important to take that kind of stuff very seriously. Just take your time with it and make sure you can hear everything well. Cable management. Keep your cables out of the way. Like I have the XLR cable looped around my mic stand just to keep it out of the way of my chair here so it doesn't get hooked. No one likes to yank a microphone off its stand. That's not good. So just keep them out of the way so that you don't trip. Mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. You're gonna trip up, you're gonna say the wrong word or bump the mic or do something weird. And so there are a couple different approaches that you need to take into account depending on what you do. Like if you do dramatic readings or podcasts or voice acting, you can basically just go along, do your performance, and then if you make a mistake, back up a little bit in your performance and then just keep going and then redo it and then just keep going and then back up. If you make another mistake, keep going, etc., 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 until you've recorded the whole thing and then edit out the bad parts in post. For music, it's a little different. For that one specifically, I recommend putting the playhead right at the very beginning of the song, like right at the start, push record, and record an entire performance all the way through, beginning to end, mistakes and all. And then do that again, and then do it a third time. Just do 3 full takes, beginning to end. And then what you do is you edit those 3 takes together in post, so that those 3 roughly good takes become one really awesome recording. That way, the main benefit of doing it that way is that A, you get more options for making sure you have good performances, and B, it doesn't take you out of the musical mindset when you are recording. So, because that's the thing, like if you have to stop and start and stop and start, it's gonna mess with. It's like you kind of get out of the musical mood a little bit. So it's better for you to just do the whole thing through while you're grooving, and like it's just better that way. And the last thing is clipping. This is something that Corpulent alluded to earlier. Yeah, good point. Walking off with the microphone still clipped on. That's how you break a microphone. But yeah, so clipping. Clipping is what happens when the sound coming into your system is too loud for it to handle. Like whenever you hear that weird buzzing noise when someone does like screams into the microphone, that's clipping, and it sounds like garbage. So yeah, don't do that. The way to prevent clipping is to turn your microphone down. Make sure that the input gain, like say on your audio interface or on your microphone, is turned down low enough so that even at your loudest volume, like even if you're like going ah into the microphone, it still doesn't clip. And then what you do is, because that's the thing, it's like as long as it's recording, it'll record it regardless of how quiet it is. It doesn't need to be a certain loudness. And then when it comes time to actually edit things, you turn it up in post. And so that way or you turn up the output gain on your headphones so that it's like it's quiet going in and loud coming out, so that rather than loud going in and clipping coming out. What sound guy? What are you talking about? Oh, the sound guy, as in the sound guy? I don't know who the sound guy is. I'm sorry. Anyway, so that's recording in a nutshell. I'm going to briefly talk about mixing. But before I do that, I want to see if anybody has any questions. And get a drink. I'm not very good at playing the ocarina. Can it? Okay, so when it comes to avoiding clipping, can it ever be too soft or low? It can be, like, if you turn it down way too quiet, or if the sound source going into it is way too quiet. That's the bigger issue, is if the sound source is too quiet. Then you start to run into issues of noise. Like there's something called the noise floor, which is where it's like, if after it gets down to a certain volume, so most audio going into this is so loud it can't be heard. The noise floor can't be heard. But if the signal's really, really quiet and then you have to turn it up later, you could hear the noise floor. But as far as like too little input gain, it also starts to run into issues with the noise floor. But generally speaking, it's like, the rule of thumb is, as long as it's like peaking at like around halfway or 3/4, as opposed to all the way to the top, it should be fine. All right, yes, mixing. Let's talk about that. So the first part of mixing really isn't mixing. It's audio editing. Okay, so yes, audio editing is the first step of this whole process. It's very similar to like editing video if you've ever worked with Premiere. So where you have like, or Premiere or Sony Vegas or iMovie or whatever, where you have clips of video and you slice them up and move them around and rearrange them. Audio editing is the exact same thing. So just a couple things to keep in mind. First starters, get rid of the junk. Remove any excess noise, like if you accidentally bump the mic, or if a stray plosive gets through, or if you say the wrong line, or something like that. Get rid of those extra bits, or just background noise. Just edit them out. Just cut them out. It makes it your goal is to get rid of distractions. That's the goal of pretty much all of this, is to get rid of distractions. When it comes to podcasting or dramatic readings, unless you're going for like a dramatic pause, avoid dead air. Avoid long periods of silence for more than a second or two. Cut out those long periods of silence, because people will lose interest, or they'll just have a hard time keeping up with it. It's just like talking, and then it's like, oh, it stopped. What happened? And then they start talking again. It's like you lose track of it, or you think it's broken. Long pauses are distracting as well. And then the other part is re-record. If there's a mistake in there, or something like a really important line that you clipped, re-record it. Just don't leave that to chance. So yeah, that's important. Silence for dramatic effect. Thanks, Corpulent. I appreciate it. And then what else? And so this here is an example of a audio file that has been edited down. As you can see, there's basically no pauses in between here and the actual and the signal. Like, there's no gaps. It's just beginning to end. It just goes all the way through. Okay, and so there's that. Level balancing. This is probably the most important part of mixing. It's just making sure everything is the right volume. If it's just one sound, like if it's just one voice, it just make sure it's comfortable. Make sure it's at a reasonable volume that you can hear it normally. It doesn't need to be blasting. When it comes to other sounds, like in music, that is so crucial, because there's like dozens and dozens of audio tracks playing at the same time, and you need to make sure that they are all balanced with each other. And make sure that you can hear everything, making sure that like everything just makes sense in context, that the vocal isn't overly loud or overly quiet. And then when it comes to like podcasting, this is a big one. For the love of God, make sure your intro music is the same volume as the people talking, because the intro music encourages people to set the volume on their speakers. And then when the people start talking, and then, oh my God, they're so quiet, then you have to turn it back up. And then when the outro music happens, it's so loud. It's like, come on. It's just so annoying. Just don't do that. Anyway, but yeah, mixing is the biggest, it makes the biggest difference out of everything, regardless of all the other plugins and fun stuff like that. And here's an example in FL Studio of a particularly busy mixing view. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of different faders at different volumes to give a general idea of what things sound like. EQ and compression. So EQ, or it stands for equalizers. It's basically like your car stereo. So you know how your car has like the bass knob, the mid-range knob, and the treble knob, and you tweak those to make it sound different. An equalizer does basically the same thing, except these ones are a lot more powerful, because most equalizers, instead of having 3 knobs, usually have 7. And you, in addition to, you can move them around, you can make them as loud or as quiet as you want, you can make them wider or narrower. They're very, very flexible, and they are used for sculpting the sound of your audio, and sort of cleaning things up or changing the way things sound a little bit. Like if your audio sounds particularly boxy or something, like if your recording sounds particularly boxy, you can put a dip in using an equalizer to get rid of that boxy noise. Now, most vocals, assuming they're recorded well, don't need much in terms of EQ. With one, yes, your name is Boxy. The only thing that you really need to have for most vocal recording is this: a high-pass filter. So this, what we're looking at here, is a parametric equalizer. An EQ, it has parameters, you can move them around. It has those points, those 7 control points. I put a little dip here for low mids, but the main thing I want to draw your attention to is this big cliff down here at the bottom. This is called a high-pass filter. What it does is it rolls off and removes all of the frequencies below a certain point. So in this case, I have it set at 100 hertz, and it completely gets rid of all the low rumbles that you would potentially get in your recording, like from breathing or bumping the mic, or if a truck drives past, or if a stray plosive gets through. The high-pass filter cleans up all of that noise, but it's below the frequencies of your actual voice, so it doesn't actually interfere there. So I generally recommend putting a high-pass filter on pretty much every instrument in your mix, especially except for the kick drum and the bass guitar. But high-pass filters are very nice on vocals. No, this is not GarageBand. This is FL Studio. And so the other tool that I generally recommend you using is a compressor. I'm not going to explain how compressors work here because they're a little bit complicated, but what they do is they turn down the loud parts of your audio and turn up the quiet parts. So what they do is, like, they detect, oh, this audio is above a certain level, and then they turn that down. And then what they do is they then turn up the overall volume so that the volume is more even, so that this is used to account for things like, oh, I'm talking over here, and now I'm talking over here, and then I'm really quiet, and now I'm really loud. It can help keep those tame. A compressor is very good for keeping that stuff in check. I'm not actually using a compressor right now. I'm just going directly into my audio interface. But a compressor is a very easy way to control the dynamics of a vocal, and they're useful in pretty much every circumstance. Now, you generally don't want to use them, like, compress as hard for things like podcasting or dramatic readings, but they can still be useful, especially for podcasting, because if you are doing a podcast and you are listening to a podcast in a car, making sure that the vocal is at a consistent volume in your car is important. you can achieve these things. Okay, so just to clarify, equalizers and compressors are available in every single digital audio workstation and audio editor. They're in Audacity, they're in Audition, they're in Sony Acid Pro, they're in Reason, Ableton, FL Studio. They're in all of them. And you can even get additional free ones if you want to. So yes, I'm not going to go into details about how to set a compressor because it's a little complicated. But if you happen to be bored later, or if you're interested in learning more about this stuff, I actually have a full tutorial on this channel on how to use a compressor for vocals. So feel free to check that out later if you want to. Shameless plug. Anyway, so that's compression. Exactly. You can't go back and change your settings once you've made changes in Audacity, which is why I generally don't recommend them. But in FL Studio here, you can change them as much as you want. Okay, you have a Blue Yeti mic. What do you think of those from my point of view? They're good microphones, no complaints about them. They have a lot of cool options on them, but because they have a lot of cool options, they are generally more expensive than the mics that I recommend for people who are just getting started with this. It's kind of like trying to pound a nail with a jackhammer. Maybe not to that degree, but yeah. And a Blue Yeti is a good microphone, but it's generally kind of overkill for most people's needs. Okay, and then, so yes. And then last bit is about best practices of mixing. I generally recommend mixing your sounds at lower volume levels. Volume levels that are quiet enough that you can have a conversation over them. Just so that so that you don't deafen yourself. You don't want hearing damage. That's not good. But the other thing is a little thing called ear fatigue, which is what happens when you listen to reasonably loud sounds for an extended period. Your ears start to change the way they hear. Like they start to compact down a little bit. That's why, like, you go to a really loud concert and then you come back and everything sounds kind of muffled and stuff. That's because of ear fatigue. Your ears are clamping down to protect themselves. But that can happen by listening to sounds at louder volume levels for extended periods. So to fix that, mix at lower volume levels and take frequent breaks to give your ears a chance to relax a little bit. And then I see a couple other questions in here, but then there's also I'll get to those after I finish these last bits. Reference material is generally very good to have because it is like just something to compare what you're doing to, like a professionally recorded song, a podcast from someone that you think sounds really good, or like a professionally recorded voice acting performance. Something to compare your performance, your recording to, so that you can get it in the rough ballpark from a sound perspective. And then the last thing, you can see it right here. If it sounds good, do it. All the rules and stuff that I suggested are not rules. They are guidelines. They are suggestions. Just take everything with a grain of salt. Try stuff out for yourself. And if it sounds good, you're doing the right thing. All right. Okay, any other questions? I see a couple things in there. Low price mics that I recommend for starting out. I mentioned earlier on, I mentioned the Samson Meteor. A couple guys that I podcasted with back in the day used blue snowballs to great effect. They're very effective. Those are generally good. Like basically anything that costs more than $50 is going to be a good USB microphone. Hey, Spherical, good to see you. Yeah, so... But yes, this stream is being recorded, so you can check out stuff afterward if you missed anything. Which audio tool to use? The one that you find easiest to use. They're all really good. I personally really like FL Studio. That's just because I've been using it for a while. I'm used to it. I like its plugins. It kind of has sort of a fun workflow for me. It's colorful, and it's just generally enjoyable to work with. Adobe Audition I also used for a while. That one's more geared towards not music. I made a song in it, and it was a pain in the butt. But it's great for podcasting. It's great for dramatic readings. It's great for voice acting. You could probably even use it for film scoring if you wanted to. I have a Premiere. When mixing the audio and instrumental, would Audition do a better job than Premiere? Adobe Premiere actually has mixing tools in it. I've been started using them for a while now. It's actually pretty good. But if you want something more robust and more flexible, Audition is good. Adobe Audition's like special feature is its like audio scrubbing functionality, like where it can edit out little blips in the frequency spectrum. That's really cool. I've never seen anything else like it. So that's really good. A Raspberry Pi for recording. You could totally use it. I've never used a Raspberry Pi. If you're confident that you can get stuff off of it without like any trouble, that's fine. My biggest concern about a Raspberry Pi is RAM, because basically you would be plugging your audio interface into a Raspberry Pi, and that could get a little funky. But yeah, exactly. Premiere and like basically most Adobe products, you can move one thing from one part to the other very easily, so generally do recommend that. Cool. Yeah, portable recording. Like they have little handheld recorders. The Zoom recorders are very popular. They have the little ORTF mic thing here going on. I think that's ORTF. I don't know if it's ORTF or XY. Yes. So yeah, very, very good. Very, very good. I personally just use this with the little guy here with this thing. I'm gonna go back to the Me Cam, whatever. Yeah, XLR inputs. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah. So any other questions about recording or otherwise? Parched. I did a lot of talking there. Post guitars. I could show my guitars. Yeah, I do have guitars here. Yeah, I have over here, I have a Epiphone SG G400 and a Chapman ML1 Modern Baritone. When did I join the fandom? I joined the fandom, I think joined is a rough time. I got into the show in 2011. I joined the fandom in 2012. Yes, Chapman, nice. Do I use any keyboards? Yes, I do. Going on a field trip. Yes, I do. This is a Nectar Impact LX61 MIDI controller. Hard to get this angle to work. So yes, it also has a Twilight. Had hard time? What are you talking about? I'm confused. Why so much Purple Horse? Because she's awesome, and those are also the only stickers I have. I don't really collect stickers much, but a friend of mine gave me some Twilight Sparkle stickers, so I started putting Twilight Sparkle stickers everywhere. Yama. Yeah, she's pretty great. Yes, I have a bunch of ponies behind as well, if that's your jams. How do you cope with muddy music or sound? Muddy, when people say something is muddy, that usually means there's excessive excessive buildup of low mid frequencies. That's usually stuff from the 150 to 300 hertz range. A minor EQ dip there can clean that up very nicely. My favorite pony. It varies. Sometimes, like, it varies. It's changed a lot. It used to be Fluttershy. I still really like Fluttershy, and then it shifted over to being Twilight Sparkle, but now I really like Starlight Glimmer. So, yeah. Cool. Anything else for people? Oh my goodness, Corpulent, what's up? Evil or good Glimmer? Good Glimmer, she's cute. And she does the I see face. Hashtag empathy Coco. There's only one. There is only Glimmer. Yay, Glimmy. All right, cool. Anyway, I think we're probably good here. Unless anybody else has any burning questions, I think I'm going to wrap up. Okay, cool. With that in mind, thank you everyone for showing up. I hope this was good I hope this was informative for you / entertaining. I try. I'm getting used to this kind of stuff. But yeah, thanks for coming over. Hope you have a good HAHCon. There's plenty of good panels coming up. My one friend, Ray, he's going to be in the Baloney's React panel, so you should go check that out. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Oh my God, get out of here. Stop it. Okay. Anyway, so yeah. Sorry, Discord was pinging me. All right, so yeah, I'll see you guys later.